The escaped criminal caught the young boy in the cemetery yard, and he lifted him up and down from his clothes. And he told him, "I will kill you." 22 years later, it was a surprise. A novel by the great writer Charles Dickens. Darkness began to fall on the villagers, bringing fear and terror. The clouds in the sky increased and the color of the clouds turned dark blue, filled with rain. The wind started to intensify like a storm. On this dirt road leading to the cemeteries and surrounded by dense trees on both sides, the trees began to move sharply to the right and left, making frightening and terrifying sounds. It's New Year's Eve. Meanwhile, the orphan child, Pep, left the house without the knowledge of his sister and her blacksmith husband, Joe, heading to the cemetery to visit the graves of his parents and 5 brothers. As soon as Pep left his house, the intensity of the wind increased and the rainfall increased. He quickly runs through the scary trees until he reaches the graves before darkness increases. Pep arrived at the cemetery and in his sights he saw a ship from afar anchored in a lake behind the graves, and he did not know why. Pep walked between the graves, frightened and terrified, turning right and left. After he visited the graves of his parents and brothers, while he was returning, a huge man came out of the graves for him, bound by chains by his feet. The man pulled Pep up and down from his clothes, and he said to him, "Who are you?" in a loud voice. He said, "Pep, sir." "Where did you come from?" "From this village, sir." He pointed to his village. The man asked him, "Who do you live with?" "With my sister, sir, and her blacksmith husband." Here the terrifying man brought him down and said to him, "In the morning, bring me food and drink, as well as a file and a hammer from your sister's husband's workshop." Pep said, "Present, my lord." Pip quickly left the graves to turn right or left until he was absent from the man and the graves. When Pip got home, his sister asked him where you were. Pep responded with graves. She said to him, "I wish you had been there a long time ago. I can no longer bear you or this blacksmith." Late at night, the villagers learned that a prisoner had escaped from the ship where the criminals, thieves, and murderers were trapped, which is anchored behind the tombs. Pip said that "This man I met was one of those criminals." The next morning, Pip entered the kitchen and carried with him a Christmas meat pie as well as some cheese. Then he entered Go's workshop and took the hammer and file to the cemetery. When Pip arrived at the cemetery, he found another man. This guy got scared of Pip and went away. Suddenly, the man who asked him for a hammer, a cooler, and food came out of the graves. Pip told him that he saw another man. Pip gave him food, a file, and a hammer and left him to go home listening to the file. The man tries to untie himself. That evening, family friends came to celebrate and eat meat and cheese pie. Among those present was Uncle Bombleshock, uncle of the blacksmith Go. Pip's sister entered the kitchen. Suddenly she screamed loudly, "Where is the pie? Where is the cheese?" Pip got scared and ran towards the door. And suddenly, there was a knock on the door. The police. Their boss said, "Where is the blacksmith?" Go said, "Yes, sir. We want you to fix these restrictions, because it seems that another prisoner has escaped. We believe they are still in the graves." Everyone carried the torches to the cemetery with Pip. And when they arrived, they found the 2 men fighting with their clothes covered in mud. The man who had taken the food looked at Pip strangely. Pip says, "I will never forget this look in my entire life." Pip thought the man thought he was the one who told the police, but Pip looked at the man and shook his head left and right, meaning I'm not me, I'm not me. Then the police took the two men to the ship. A year had passed since the cemetery incident, and while Go was talking to Pip and saying to him, I wish I could be in your place, Pip, when your sister comes to hit you. I am very sad for you. Suddenly Pip's sister came in during this conversation and said, Pip, if you don't accept the job that Uncle Bumbleshock brought you, I will not have mercy on you. It will be used in the blacksmith shop day and night. Present, sister, I will accept. Uncle Bumbleshock was with Miss Havisham in her palace. She asked him to bring her a boy to play with the girl Estella, and she must go with Uncle Bumbleshock tomorrow. Miss Havisham is very rich. No one sees it. She does not leave her house and no one visits her except a few. Her house is always dark. The tall, dense trees inside prevent sunlight from passing through. The next day Pip went with Uncle Bumbleshock to Miss Havisham's house. They knocked on the door and then a beautiful little girl opened. She told Pip to come in, but you mean Uncle Bumbleshock, go away and close the gate. The girl told Pip to walk behind me while holding a candle in her hand. Climb across a narrow, dark staircase. She told him to wait here. She entered and then called for him to come in. Pip says I saw a woman wearing clothes that turned from white to white with yellow. She seems to have been wearing it for a long time. On her head is a wedding veil with fleeting and dead flowers on it. The curtains are closed and covered in dust. It seems that it has not been opened for a long time. The clock indicates 9 to a third and never moves. Miss Havisham said to Estella, play with him. Estella said, but he is one of the poor common people. Look at his dirty clothes. Look at his bad shoes. But play with him, said Miss Havisham. I want you to break his heart. She said it in a low voice. After Pip and Estella finished playing, Miss Havisham asked him to leave and come tomorrow. Pip walked after Estella across the narrow, dark staircase when they reached the gate of the house. Estella placed food on the floor for him and then asked him to take it. Pip bent down to take the food from the floor, crying, his eyes full of tears. When Estella saw him crying, she smiled. Pip then left the house, heartbroken. Pip kept crying and didn't tell anyone. But he felt ashamed of himself and his life and decided to learn. Until Estella treats him well after that. Miss Beatty was a family friend and a night school teacher, and Pip asked her to teach him. One time, while Pip was returning from school at night, he found Go sitting in a bar with a stranger. Pip sat up. The man asked Go, is there a ship near here with prisoners? Go said yes. In the swamp behind the cemeteries. The man asked again, did any of the prisoners escape from it? Then Pip felt uncomfortable. But Pip noticed that the man was placing a cooler next to the cup of tea he was drinking. Pip says it's the same cooler I took from Go's workshop and gave to the man in the cemetery who was escaping the ship. Of course Go didn't notice that and I didn't tell anyone. Pip realized to himself that this man had met this convict who was in the cemetery and I gave him the cooler and food. When leaving, this man gave me a new piece of metal wrapped in a piece of paper and told me to be careful. Then I felt afraid. When we returned home, it turned out that the paper with the coin wrapped in it was a paper fairy. Go immediately returned to the bar, but he could not find the man to give him the paper fairy. On the next visit to Miss Havisham's house, Estella led me through the house to a dark room in which there were 3 ladies, Sarah, Georgiana, and Camilla. A man, Ramon Pocket, came to visit Miss Havisham, check on her and her health, and congratulate her on her birthday. Then we climbed the narrow, dark staircase, and as we ascended, we met a big man with dark hair. He asked me, "Are you a neighbor?" I said yes. "So act wisely," he said. "This is not a place for children to play." I thought to myself that this man might be a doctor. Estella asked me, "My beautiful?" I said yes. But she looked at me with a hard face and said, "Why don't you cry?" I said I will never cry again. We entered Miss Havisham's room. It has not changed as it is. She was wearing the same old wedding dress. Above her white-haired head is a wedding veil, and the flowers on it are withered and dead. She told me to go into the dining room. I entered a room full of dirt, spiders, and insects. Then Miss Havisham came into the room quietly and pointed to something long on the dining table. She said it was a wedding cake. At this moment, Miss Havisham's relatives entered to check on her health, but she expelled them. Then she said to Pip, "This cake has been here for a long time. Some time before you were born. Estella and I played for a short time. Then Miss Havisham asked me to leave and come back next week. Estella led me out of the house. Then she put the food on the ground and then went up. While I was taking food, I found a boy looking at me from the window. He came quickly. His face was pale, taller than mine, and had short blonde hair. He asked me to hit each other. I was running towards him, and every time he fell to the ground. We did that more than once. In the end he told me, I won. He was brave. And I felt sorry for him. And it's time to leave. I didn't see him after that. I called him the pale boy. My sister and Uncle Bumbleshock always said that Miss Havisham wanted to adopt me and give me all her wealth. That's what they were thinking. One time Miss Havisham asked me, "What do you want Pep to be when you grow up?" I told her to mourn. She said, "Then tell Go to come with you tomorrow." Already the next day Go went with me to Miss Havisham's house. She gave him a bag of money. She said, "This is your share. This is Pep's reward. He is a good boy. He will become your student from now on. You will not get any more money." Then she asked us to leave. I started my work with Go. But I have changed now. I no longer want to be a blacksmith. I was ashamed of my home and my family. Estella was in my thoughts. Even though I don't see her anymore. I was sure she didn't like my position in life. So I continued my education diligently. This was thanks to Miss Biddy. A year later I asked Go for leave to go to Miss Havisham to thank her for helping me. The next day I went to Miss Havisham's house to visit her. Miss Sarah Pocket opened the door. Miss Havisham said to me angrily, "Why did you come? I won't give you any more money." "No, I just came to say thank you." She looked at me and said, "Are you looking for Estella? She went to London. You will become a noble lady, like the children of wealthy aristocratic families." Then she asked me to leave and come back after every year. My birthday. On my return, I met Mr. Wopsle. He was one of the guests on New Year's Eve. We walked together in the thick fog. Then a young man slowly came towards us. It's Orlick, who works as a blacksmith for Geo. He told us that the convicts had escaped from prison. I do not feel comfortable with him. And I don't believe him. When we got home, we found a large crowd of people in the kitchen. Someone came in and hit my sister on the head. She is in a bad condition and does not know anything. And the chains and chains of one of the accused on the ground. I said to myself that they were similar to the shackles of the prisoner I helped in the cemeteries. But I'm sure he can't do that. I'm sure it's Orlick. Because he doesn't love me and he doesn't love my sister. But I don't have proof. When my sister could sit down, she drew a hammer. I thought it was a blacksmith's hammer. Referring to Orlick. Go needed someone to help him prepare food and clean. That's why Miss Buddy came to help us at home. It's been a few years. And every time I go to Miss Havisham, I don't see Estella. I was thinking about her all the time. Buddy has become an important member of the family. She took good care of everything. My sister can no longer walk or talk. One day I told Beatty I wanted to become a gentleman. I am not happy. I want my life to change. Beatty replied, if you want to be a gentleman for Estella, you don't have to care what you think. But if you want to marry her, maybe she doesn't deserve it. Pep says that may be true, but I still like her and I can't change my feelings towards her. In the evening, while I was in the village tavern, listening to Mr. Warsell reading the newspaper in a loud voice, I noticed that a stranger was looking at us. I remembered him. He's the gentleman I met on the stairs at Miss Havisham's house, and I thought he was a doctor. The man said, I want to tell you a secret. He seemed like an important man. We invited him to the workshop, and as soon as we arrived he said he was Mr. Jaggers, a lawyer from London, and he works for someone, but I can't tell you his name. What I can say is that Pep will have a great future and high hopes. He will receive a large amount of money and possessions, but he must have a good education. The only condition is that he not be asked about the name of the donor or benefactor. We agreed immediately. Education will begin in London and the teacher will be Mr. Matthew Pocket. He will make you a gentleman like the children of the large aristocratic families in London. He gave Joe a sum of money and gave me £20 to buy new clothes. I decided to wear new clothes to Uncle Bomblechowk's house. I don't want the poor people in the village to see me in new clothes. I explained this to Joe and Beatty. I was starting to feel more and more ashamed of Joe's education. I asked Beatty if she could teach Joe to speak better, but I refused. I felt more lonely than ever before. The next day I visited Miss Havisham dressed in new clothes. I told her that I would be given a great fortune. She said, I know. I said that, and I am very grateful to her. She said, you will have a good life, but follow Mr. Jaggers' instructions. Now I'm sure she's the secret donor that Mr. Jaggers didn't tell me about. Mr. Jaggers told me that Mr. Matthew Pocket was a relative of Miss Havisham. He will be my teacher in London. The next day I said goodbye to my sister, Joe, and Beatty. I boarded the bus that took me to Mr. Jaggers' office in London. After about 5 hours, there was an employee named Mr. Wemmick. He told me that Mr. Jaggers was still at work and I should wait for him. It was an unpleasant place, and I was sad because I left the blacksmith Joe. Mr. Jaggers came back and told me that I should go and stay at an inn called Bernard's, where I will live with Mr. Matthew Pocket's son, my new teacher. Mr. Wemmick took me to Bernard's Inn after Mr. Jaggers gave me a large sum of money. When we arrived, Mr. Wemmick left me in front of an old house, miles from London. After half an hour, a tall, thin young man's back. He asked me without paying attention, "Are you Mr. Pep?" I'm sorry. I was in the market. When he invited me in, I saw his face. He's that pale young man with whom I fought at Miss Havisham's house. He wasn't handsome, but his face was cheerful. I loved him. He is Herbert Pocket, son of Mr. Matthew Pocket, who I will live with in the hostel. When we sat at the dining table, he said to me, "Pep, the day we met at Miss Havisham's house, she thought she could adopt me. But that didn't happen. I left and never came back again." Pep says to Herbert, "I think you feel sad, because you could have been rich. She could have been engaged to Estella." Herbert says the opposite. It was a lucky escape. Estella is an arrogant, cruel and arrogant girl. Havisham adopted her, you know, to get revenge on men. I was very surprised. Estella was adopted then. I asked Herbert, "Why do you want to use it in this strange way?" Now I knew from Herbert that Mr. Jaggers was Miss Havisham's lawyer. He was the one who suggested that Mr. Matthew Pocket be my professor in London. Now I am convinced that Mrs. Havisham is my secret donor, says Pep. Herbert continued. When Havisham was a young girl, she and her half-brother inherited a large fortune from her father. Her brother quickly spent his fortune. Then he started to be jealous of his sister. He thought about proposing to one of his friends so that he could get the rest of her wealth. He never thought about it. Havisham gave most of her wealth to her fiancé. Sir Matthew Pocket had warned her about this future husband. But Havisham thought it was Sir Matthew Pocket who wanted her fortune. So she asked him to leave. Since then, my father did not go to Miss Havisham's house. On the wedding day, while everything was prepared for the celebration, Miss Havisham is wearing a wedding dress. Wedding cake on the table. Guests are invited to celebrate. Bad news came. The fiancé has left Miss Havisham. That was at exactly 9:30. Since then, nothing has changed at Miss Havisham's house. Everything has been in place for 20 years. Pep says he thought that if he had married her, he would have had all the wealth. Herbert says, it seems he was already married. This was done by agreement between the half-brother and that preacher. The next day we went to Mr. Matthew Pocket's house in West London, in an area called Hammersmith. It's an old house next to the river. I found Herbert's younger brothers playing in the garden, happy. Sir Matthew Pocket and his wife were as delighted with me as their son Herbert, and they welcomed me. After they saw my room, they introduced me to two other young men who were also staying there. Startop. He was a nice young man, while the young man, Bentley Drummel, was arrogant, condescending, and angry. My education has been improved and I have learned how to be a noble young man, because I will be very rich one day. Mr. Jaggers was giving me more money whenever I asked him to, but he never laughed. Everyone seemed to fear him. While I was talking to Mr. Wemmick, the employee in Mr. Jaggers' office, he invited me to visit his house where he lives with his father, close to central London. But it looks like a wooden castle. Mr. Wemmick says, all the criminals in London are afraid of Mr. Jaggers, so they leave him alone. Mr. Jaggers never even closes his house. He says, I want to see that thief who dares to rob my house. A few days later Mr. Jaggers invited us to eat at his house. It's a big house. He invited me, Herbert, the two young men, Startop and Bentley Drummel. There was plenty of food for everyone to eat and drink. Mr. Jaggers served us himself. When he saw Mr. Jaggers, Bentley Drummel, he said, "Who is he?" I said, "Bentley Drummel." "So his name is Bentley Drummel." He looked at him a lot and seemed to be thinking about something. Mr. Jaggers was impressed by his appearance. Bentley Drummel began to brag about himself. "And he is better than all of us." And everyone began to be proud of themselves. Although I don't like that. After that, a woman who looked like she was 40 years old entered. She is tall and thin, with pale eyes. She was afraid and worried that Mr. Jaggers would say something about the food. Mr. Jaggers said, "Do you want to see the real power?" We introduced her. "She's his housekeeper." Molly raised her sleeves. She had horrific deep wounds on her wrist. Looks like someone cut it with a bad knife in the past. Mr. Jaggers says, "I have never met a man or woman with such strong wrists." Then Mauler left. Mr. Jaggers said, "At 9:30 we will finish, gentlemen. Enjoy your time." Upon leaving, Bentley Drummel realized that he no longer had an audience to brag to. I told Mr. Jaggers before leaving that I did not like my daughter Drummel. He told me to stay away from him. Fortunately, he finished his education and will return to his city. A few weeks later, a message arrived from Beatty. "Mr. Joe will be in London tomorrow. He will be happy to see you because you are kind-hearted. Your poor sister, as she is, has not changed. She talks about you a lot and thinks about what you do." Pep says, "I wished I could pay Joe so he wouldn't come. I am very ashamed of him. But for good luck he will visit me at Bernard's Inn and not at Hammersmith. I don't want to introduce him to Mr. Matthew Pocket's family." One morning, Joe arrived at the residence. He seemed uncomfortable and stood holding his hat. He is careful not to do anything wrong or say anything wrong. He was calling me sir. We had breakfast with Herbert, who tried to make Joe comfortable. He's been sneezing a lot. He stood away from the table. He dropped a lot of food on the ground. When Herbert left for work, I knew why Joe came. He says Mrs. Havisham is informing you that Estella has returned home. I was very happy, but I was hoping Joe wouldn't see me in that situation. Joe left. Bob says, "I felt remorse because I treated Joe badly. I went out after him, but I did not find him. I thought it would be best to stay in a hotel next to Miss Havisham's house, instead of Joe's house. While I was waiting for the bus that would pick me up from London, I saw two convicts bound with chains on their hands and feet. Their guard was carrying a gun. I recognized one of the convicts immediately. He was the man who gave me the new coin and the paper fairy at the village in a long time ago. He doesn't seem to know me. It's been a long time. He dressed like a noble young man. The convicts talked together and I could not avoid talking to them. The first convict said, "I was locked up for a few months. When I left, another convict named Magach asked me to help him. He asked me to find the boy who helped him years ago when he was on the run in the swamps of the cemeteries. He gave me a new coin and a pound of paper for this boy, who helped him in the cemetery when he was on the run." Pep says, "The convict to whom I gave food and a cooler years ago was called Magwitch." I was thinking. The second convict said, "Permission." Magwitch trusted you? Said yes. Magach was sentenced to life imprisonment, the guard said. I was afraid. I got off the bus at the nearest place. It was late. I arrived at the hotel and was tired. I didn't sleep well that night. When I went to Miss Havisham's house, I discovered that it was the bad young man, Orlick, who I was sure was the one who hit my sister in the head with a hammer a long time ago. He is the gatekeeper. I felt anxious, so I went straight up to check on Miss Havisham. Everything has not changed. There was an elegant lady sitting next to her. When I saw her, I realized it was Estella. It has become more beautiful than ever before. But it made me feel like I was still a poor commoner boy. Miss Havisham asked me, "Has Estella changed much, Pep?" I said yes. I didn't know her at first. Miss Havisham asked us to walk in the garden. Estella said, "Since you have become a good man, you must have new friends. Because those in the village won't be good enough. Is not it?" At that moment I decided not to see Joe again. Pep says, "Estella, you were very cruel to me. And you made me sad." She said, "You know I don't have a heart. I am not good. I am not compassionate." When she talked to me, she reminded me of someone. But I don't know who he is. When I was with Miss Havisham, I told her that everyone loves Estella. She said, "I love her. Love her if she is cruel to you. Love her. If I break your heart. Love her. I'm the one who made it so. I will tell you what true love is. To give your heart to someone. As I did." Then she fell from her chair, crying loudly. I tried to help her. There was a knock on the door. "Come on, Mr. Jaggers." It seemed like she was waiting for him. In the evening, while we were eating dinner, Mr. Jaggers did not look at Estella at all, while Estella was looking at him a lot. This gave me a strange feeling. I told Mr. Jaggers not to check on Mrs. Havisham. In the presence of this guard, Orlick, Mr. Jaggers said, "Leave it to me. I'm going to fire him." While I was walking in the village, I didn't talk to anyone, because I was proud of myself. But I felt guilty, because I didn't see Joe. I just sent him a gift before leaving the village. Estella has planned to visit London. I agreed to meet her there. I was happy that night. I did not sleep with joy. When I went to London, I told Herbert my feelings for Estella. But he told me that it would make you unhappy. You must forget it. I said to myself, impossible to forget. Estella arrived in London a few weeks later. When I saw her, I thought again. He reminds me of someone, but I don't know him. Estella got out of the carriage she was carrying. She said she was going in a carriage to Richmond. "And you, Pep, will come with me. And take this wallet to pay for everything." We sat in an inn to drink some tea until the carriage arrived. I was happy to have Estella with me. The car arrived quickly. We went to Richmond. On the way we passed the walls of Newgate Prison. Mr. Jaggers knows the secrets of this terrible prison. He used to visit his clients here. I think so, Estella said. Pep says, "I've known Mr. Jaggers all my life. But now I know him better than I did when I was a child." Estella says, "How did you know him?" Pep says, "He invited us and we had dinner at his house. The carriage passed under a street light. I knew again that she reminded me of someone I didn't know. We passed by Mr. Matthew Pocket's house in Hammersmith. On the way I invited Estella to visit me at Mr. Matthew Pocket's house. But she said, "BBB, Mrs. Havisham gave it to me. Almost all of its jewelry. She wants me to write to her a lot. How am I? Where were you? What was I wearing?" I'm glad this is the first time Estella calls me Pep. Pep says, "Ever since I met Mr. Jaggers I knew I would become a gentleman. Sometimes I wished I had never met Miss Havisham, because I don't know my feelings towards him. Estella. My expectations of her love for me may not be certain. I felt guilty for 2 reasons. I haven't visited Joe. I was extravagant and encouraged Herbert to spend more money than he should have. We both became members of the Nobility Club. We ate a lot of expensive food. We discussed with some other members, including Bentley Drummel. We would come back after midnight. We wake up late. Once upon a time, during our visit to Miss Havisham, a terrible argument occurred between Estella and Miss Havisham. Estella said that you made me. Miss Havisham once complained to me. Estella is arrogant and cruel, and with a cold heart. Estella now had many admirers in London. I felt jealous of them all, especially Bentley Drummel. He was stupid, arrogant, and ugly. I was sorry that Estella knew him. One time I told Estella how sad I was that she had encouraged Bentley Drummel to visit her. She replied, "You know I want to fool all my fans except you, Pep. Herbert and I were friends. Whenever we pay off our old debts, new debts appear. Especially Herbert, because he had little money. One day, there were reports of death. My sister. I went to attend the funeral. The house was full of neighbors wearing black clothes. I was sad because they didn't catch Orlick. So I thought about taking revenge on Orlick. Beatty said, "I saw Orlick in that tree the night your sister died. I think I saw him again tonight too. Orlick attacked my sister and now he scares Beatty. I promised that I would force Orlick to leave the village. I will visit you often," I said in a calm voice. "I won't leave you alone." Beatty said, "Are you sure you will come often?" I was hurt. But between me and myself, I wasn't sure that I would keep my promise. When I said goodbye to Joe and Beatty the next day, I realized that they knew me better than myself. 21. It will soon be my 21st birthday. I was hoping to get all my wealth then, and to discover the name of the secret donor. But when Mr. Jaggers arrived, he gave me a very expensive gift. It amounts to £500. He told me that he couldn't answer any questions about my secret enhancer. I cannot send my thanks. He also said, he does not know when I will meet the benefactor. I realized then that it might be years before I knew the truth. Even now I was worried about Herbert. He did not earn enough money to pay off his debts. So I decided to help him. Mr. Wemmick suggested to use some of my money to help a merchant named Clarica in his work, in exchange for Herbert being employed at a good salary. Herbert was happy. He accepted the job immediately. 2 years have passed. Herbert and I moved to our new house by the river, because I no longer need a teacher. I have not visited Mr. Matthew Pocket's house in Smith. Herbert often travelled abroad for Mr. Clarica. I missed him very much and hoped that he would return quickly. On a dark and stormy evening, When Herbert was in France, I was reading by the fire in the house. When the clock struck 11 p.m. I closed my book. Then I heard a strange noise outside on the stairs. I turned up the lights to see this noise. And what happens outside on the stairs? Is there someone? Yeah. A man's voice came. I've come for Mr. Pep. To see him. I asked him, is there something? The man said as he approached me, nothing. Then I saw him. A man in his 60s, with dark grey hair, and a heavy, rough coat. The man was glad to see me. He said, I am happy that you have grown up, my son. I suddenly realized that I knew him. The wind and rain have washed away all those years that have passed since I met him. He is the man I met in the cemetery and gave him a cooler and food. He is the doomed Magoich. Magoich said, I have never forgotten what you did for me in the cemeteries that day, Pep. I was sentenced to life imprisonment. When they caught me, they sent me to Australia. I worked there as a sheep farmer, and I made a fortune. Pep said to Magoich, your friend kept his promise. He found me. He brought this to me many years ago at the village inn. He took out the new piece of metal. I wanted to find you as soon as I got back to England. So I wrote to Mr. Jaggers. And you gave him your address. Magoich said, when he saw my astonishment. Yes, Pep. I have made a noble man out of you. When you gave me the cooler and food years ago, I decided that if I became rich, I would make a gentleman out of you. I have worked hard in Australia ever since. So you don't need to work with it. I am your second father. You mean more to me than a son. Pep says. I didn't know what to say. Magoich took my gold watch out of my pocket and looked at the ring on my finger, my clothes, and my books. He said happily, what a wonderful young man you are now, Pep. I was terrified. Magoich continued. Mr. Jaggers is the only one who knows. All the time I was in Australia I was planning to return to see you, sir. He means Pep. I was disappointed. Permission. Miss Havisham was not the secret donor after all. It was not intended to be appropriate for Estella. This convict is what made me leave Joe for a new life in London. I felt sad and ashamed of myself. Magoich approached me and whispered, the problem, my son, is that I have a life sentence. If I get caught, I will go back to prison. Pep wondered to himself, what do I do with Magoich? Where will he stay? While Magoich was sleeping well in Herbert's room, while I was coming down to get light from the basement, I collided with something. He was a man crouching in the corner. When I asked him, what you doing? To flee. The guard and I followed him. We looked for the man, but we didn't find anyone, the guard said. Today was stormy. We did not accept much. We received 2 men. One of them was wearing a dark coat. In the morning I asked Magoich, was there anyone with you? Said no. But it could be someone who followed him into the building. I will turn you into the best gentleman in London, said Magoich. He threw a wallet full of money on the table. Everything I have is yours, Pep. And there are many. 24. He told me to call him Professor from now on. It was his name in Australia. Pruvis said he is always coming back. I went to see Mr. Jaggers at once. He assured me that Pruvis was my benefactor and benefactor. He advised me to be careful. I was certain that Pruvis would be arrested. I bought Pruvis new clothes. Even with these new clothes, Pruvis seemed to be one of the convicts. When Herbert returned, Pruvis told him not to tell anyone. Herbert immediately agreed. Who was as afraid as I was? Pruvis laughed and said to Herbert, "I will make you a gentleman too, my son." I was very grateful to Pruvis. However, I felt terrified, because my benefactor was a criminal. Herbert and I knew that Pruvis would be arrested if he remained in England. And because Pruvis was good to me, I felt it was my duty to help him escape. After that, I didn't want to see him again. The next day, Pruvis told me about his life. He did not know his place of birth or his parents. As a child, he was always hungry. He used to steal to eat. He begs to stay alive. When he grew up, he continued to steal as well. He spent a lot of time in prison. When he was out of prison, he sometimes worked for a short period. Pruvis says, "I learned to read and write from people I met across the country." He even got married, and it seemed that his life was starting to get much better. Professor met a man named Compayson. At first, Pruvis thought his new friend was a gentleman, because he was dressed and spoke well. And then Pruvis discovered that Compayson was a dishonest man. He discovered that Compayson and his friend Arthur had been very successful in the past, as they had deceived a rich young woman. They took most of her money. They spent almost all the money, and they needed to get more. Arthur couldn't help because he was sick. He also felt guilty for what he did in the past. So that's when Pruvis started stealing for Compayson. They were quickly arrested. However, because Compayson dresses well and speaks well like the nobles, the court believed him in what he said, saying that Pruvis was responsible for all thefts. Therefore, Pruvis was sentenced to a longer prison term than Compayson. The two men were sent to the ship's prison in the graveyard. While they were on the ship, a severe fight broke out between Pruvis and Compayson. Pruvis swam in the water until he reached the graves. He met Pep that day. Compayson also escaped that day. When I met the second accused in the cemetery, I told Pruvis about it. So he started looking for him. When they found him, they started fighting. Then the soldiers came that day, found them, and returned them to the prison ship. I remembered walking with Joe that day and with the soldiers. And I remembered what happened. Compayson was placed in leg restraints to attempt to escape. However, Pruvis received a life sentence and was sent to Australia. I am here today, Pep. I didn't want to stay there for life. I had to go back and see you, Pep. I wanted to see you as a gentleman. I felt afraid for Pruvis. I was terrified of him too. I asked Pruvis, "Is Compayson alive?" He said, "I don't know. But I'm sure if he existed he would want to kill me." Herbert showed me a note he had written. Miss Havisham's half-brother is called Arthur. Compayson is the man who took Miss Havisham's money and dumped her. My fear for Pruvis increased a lot because if Compayson found him, he would kill him. Herbert and I said that Pruvis should leave the place as soon as possible. I felt like I had to help Pruvis escape. Estella has left Richmond, and now she lives with Miss Havisham. I decided to visit her immediately. Herbert offered to take care of Pruvis in my absence. On my way to Miss Havisham's house, I stopped near a bar. I found Bentley Drummel. He had dinner with a young woman. He seemed happy with himself. When he got on his horse, I noticed a man outside the bar. It reminded me of Orlick. I arrived at Miss Havisham's house. She was in her room wearing a wedding dress. Estella is sitting near her. She was doing embroidery. "Why are you here, Pep?" She was amazed to see me. "You won't be surprised to know that I'm not happy. I have known the true benefactor. I realize now that I didn't understand anything. I thought Mr. Jaggers." Miss Havisham interrupted him. "He had nothing to do. He is my lawyer. He is also the lawyer of your accidental donor. And that's it. He is a lawyer for many people. But you have misled me. This is not good. Yes, I have misled you. But why should I be compassionate? You were kind to me when I was little. You believed, Pep, what you wanted to believe. Your relatives Herbert and Matthew Pocket were kind to me. Now I'm going outside. And you must help Herbert because I'm going abroad." Miss Havisham shook her head in agreement. I turned to Estella and said, "Miss Havisham wanted us to get married." Estella looked at me coldly. "I didn't share that feeling with you. I warned you that I don't have a heart. I've seen Bentley Drummel now. Surely you don't love him? We'll soon be married." I returned to London late. When I'm almost there, I found a young man stopping me and giving me a paper. Mr. Wemmick warns me not to come home. I went to Mr. Wemmick the next day to know what happened. He told me he was in Newgate prison for some business. And someone told him. He, Herbert, and Pruvis are observers. He also heard that Compeyson was still alive and that he was here in London. Wemmick, of course, warned Herbert before me. So they moved to a house by the river. Mr. Wemmel, his wife, and his daughter, Carla, live in this house. I went to check on Pruvis, who knew he was in danger. He agreed to run outside with me. Herbert and I agreed that we should have a boat by the river. We will use it to escape when the time comes. Herbert and I started learning to row when the weather was good. We were afraid for Pruvis. We felt like someone was constantly watching us. Estella married Bentley Drummel. On a February evening, I went to the theatre to forget my sorrows. Mr. Wopsle is a family friend. He works as an actor in London. I went to congratulate him. After work, he told me that someone was watching him from behind during the play. "Do you remember, Pep, when I was little and the soldiers came home?" I remember well. And we went to the cemeteries. I am sure he is one of the accused. And he is the one watching you. I'm sure it's Compeyson. Mr. Wemmick and I were eating at Mr. Jaggers' house. Mr. Jaggers told me to visit Miss Havisham. The next day Mr. Jaggers told me that Bentley Drummel was strong but not smart. He may find that his marriage to Estella will be difficult. I don't think he will be happy. He looked at his manager, Molly, who put some food on the table. I remembered now that her hands, her eyes, her hair reminded him of Estella. I was sure there was a relationship between them. On our way back, I asked Mr. Wemmick to tell me Molly's story. "Tell me." When she was young, she was homeless and then married a man who spent most of his time in prison. One day, she was accused of killing her daughter and another woman. She was acquitted in court by lawyer Mr. Jaggers. Then she became grateful to Mr. Jaggers. She became his house manager. This happened about 20 years ago. Mr. Jaggers was good at what he did. Could Estella be Sire's daughter? Pip said he would ask Miss Havisham. The day after I was surprised, Miss Havisham now seemed afraid of me. As soon as I entered, she said she would help Herbert so he could remain employed by Mr. Clarriker. Miss Havisham's eyes were filled with tears. Pep asked her, "Did you marry Estella?" "Yes." "Forgive me, Pep. You used it to break your heart. But if you knew my story, you would forgive me." Then she told me everything. When Miss Havisham wanted to adopt a daughter, she told Mr. Jaggers, "Bring her Estella. Tell Mr. Jaggers that Estella is an orphan. It's my fault Estella was cruel. Forgive me, Pep," she said while crying. I didn't know how to help Miss Havisham, so I decided to leave. Before I go, I took a short walk in the unclean garden. It was full of memories. Suddenly I had a bad feeling. I was sure something bad had happened to Miss Havisham. I ran back to her room and she was sitting screaming in her chair. A spark from the heating fire fell on her dress, burning it. I was wearing a coat. I took it off and covered Miss Havisham with it, and trying to put out the fire, I used the tablecloth as well. I did not pay attention to my hand, which was burned. We were lying on the floor of the room. I waited for the doctor and Miss Havisham's relatives. While I was leaving, Miss Havisham was shouting and shouting loudly and saying, "Forgive me, forgive me." When I got home, Herbert bandaged my wounds. Herbert tried to distract me from thinking about the fire. Herbert told Pep that he had a great conversation with Pruvis. Herbert says, 20 years ago, Pruvis was in love with a young woman named Molly. Get married. They had a daughter. Pruvis loved his baby girl very much. But one day after a quarrel between Molly and Pruvis, Molly disappeared with the little girl. Pruvis was afraid that his daughter had died. After several months, Pruvis heard that Molly was accused of murder. Some people have heard that she killed the child as well as another old lady. He was upset and did not go to trial. Mr. Jaggers was Mrs. Molly's lawyer and she was acquitted. But Pruvis did not know what happened to Molly or the little girl. Then she woke up. Herbert. This is unbelievable. Pruvis is Estella's father. I went to Mr. Jaggers and told him that Pruvis and Molly were Estella's parents. Mr. Jaggers explained to me. After Molly left Pruvis, she hid Estella, because Molly was accused of murder. Miss Havisham asked me to adopt a baby girl at that time. So I took Estella. As soon as she became a free Molly after she got out of prison, I asked her to be my housekeeper. Mr. Jaggers asked me not to tell anyone about this. I promised him. 2 letters arrived, one from Mr. Wemmick. He says that it is the appropriate time to escape, and the second time his companion did not say who he was. He promised me that I would find out a lot about Pruvis. If you go to my old house next to the swamp near my village. I decided to leave immediately. But I left a piece of paper for Herbert to tell him what happened. It was wet and dark. I knocked on the door, but no one responds. I tried to open the door with my hands. I found it opening easily. And while I was inside, I was hit by something. What is this? I screamed. Auxiliary assistance. It was the hand of a powerful person. He tied me by the injured person's hands. I knew him by the light of the candle. It's young Orlick. I've got you. You have ruined everything for me. I lost my job with Miss Havisham. And you told me not to trust me. You will not receive help because the house is far away. So I thought about who would help me if I died here, especially Pruvis. He told me, "I'll tell you something. You made me upset and jealous. So I will take revenge on you." Now I know that Orlick found Pruvis's chains in the graves, took them, and then attacked my sister in the kitchen. Then he left the handcuffs so that the villagers would say that the owner of these handcuffs was the one who committed the crime. Orlick will kill me. He turned towards me. I fainted. When I opened my eyes, I found Herbert next to me. As for Orlick, he escaped. What happened? That's when I left home. I left the letter at the entrance. Herbert began to worry about me. He met Startop. They both followed me into the swamps. They came with a group of village men. And this saved my life. But now there is no time to look for Orlick. I must help Pruvis escape. Any delay would be dangerous for him. Herbert and I had prepared a plan for Pruvis and I to escape out of the country. I quickly packed our bags and took them with me to the river, where Herbert and Startop would wait by the boat. We don't know exactly when we'll go, but I have to take Pruvis outside without anyone seeing him. We were paddling slowly across the river, so no one will notice anything strange. Pruvis joined us when no one was watching. We went further into the river. Late this evening we tied up the boat and spent the night near the bar. Our journey continued the next day until we reached the place from which we would board the ship carrying the passengers. We parked our boat in a faraway place where no one could see it. After an hour, the ship that was going to Hamburg appeared. We felt confident that nothing would go wrong with our plan. We said goodbye to Herbert and Startop, and we stood up. While we were standing, another boat came and stopped near us. There are some policemen there, and another old man. It was Compayson. My heart stopped being surprised. But Pruvis was the most surprised of us all. He had never expected anything like this ending. Abel McWitch, known as Pruvis. You must come with us. Suddenly Pruvis jumped into the policeman's boat. Compayson was snatched from his feet. The ship's crew couldn't stop it. Then it passed near us after a moment of great water waves. It passed above us. And you swept us away. There was screaming, while our boat was filling with water and we started drowning. I was wrestling to float. The policeman pulled me out of the river. Herbert and Startop were actually saved, but Pruvis and Compayson were missing. Then we saw something black in the water. It was a Pruvis. He was hit on the head by a ship as it passed by. We lured him to the boat. I sat with him. Compayson never appeared again. Pruvis wrestled him under the water and pushed him away. Pruvis did not see anything happen to Compayson after that. Pruvis was lying on the floor of the boat. I was holding his hand. He was kind and compassionate to me. I looked at him and felt pity for him. He left Australia and came back to England for me. Now he could pay with his life for it. You can become a great and noble man without me, Pep. Pruvis said it weakly. I said, I will never leave you. Pruvis was transferred to the prison hospital. I used to visit him every day. I can't leave him. Now my debt is increasing. Herbert has a new job in Egypt. Mr. Clarica offered me a job and left me to think. The court found that Pruvis and other defendants were guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. Everyone cried immediately. But Pruvis was calm. He knew it could happen. The last time I visited Pruvis, he was very weak. I told him, "Pruvis, your daughter is alive. And she is very beautiful. And I love her." He looked at me with sympathy and affection. Then his fist became weaker in my hands. Then he died. I was tired and worried about increasing my debt. I became sick. I no longer know what day I will be. The illness made me have disturbing dreams, especially on fire day. I opened my eyes one morning. I found Joe next to me. He took care of me like I was a baby for a few weeks. He was very kind. When I got better, Joe had some news. Miss Havisham died a short time ago. She left all her money to Estella. And also some money from Mr. Matthew Pocket. Because I told her that she had to help him. I was pleased. Because I was able to help them. Orlick also went to prison. He broke into Uncle Bomblechowk's house and tried to rob him. But Uncle Bomblechowk recognized him. Joe kept taking care of me until I was healthy. One morning, I woke up and couldn't find Joe. But he left a letter to say that he had paid all my debts. Now I won't go to prison. He said at the end of the speech, "You are my best friend, Pep." Now I have to go back and thank Joe at the blacksmith shop. Likewise, I must see Bidey. I wanted to tell her how I hurt her heart in the past. I hope you get married. I came back but no one was home when I arrived. But after a few minutes, I saw Joe and Bidey in the street. They were glad to see me. She started crying. "It's my wedding day, Pep," she said happily. Joe and I got married. They welcomed me back. Although the news was a surprise, I was glad I never told Joe that I wanted to marry Bidey. I left for London and sold everything. I traveled to Egypt to work with Mr. Clarica. Herbert and I became managers. It was 11 years before Bidey and Joe were seen again. Now they have 2 children, a boy and a girl. The boy is called Pep. This night I went to Miss Havisham's house. I found a spacious and unclean garden. While I was walking as if it was a strange place, I thought about Estella. She is now unhappy with Bentley Drummel. He was cruel to her. I learned many years ago that Bentley Drummel died in an accident along with his horse. I do not know whether get married Estella again or not. I've seen her now. Estella is no longer beautiful. She looks tired, and her eyes are sad. But she is still attractive. I called her. We sat down to talk. She said, "I haven't been here for many years. But today I came back to say goodbye to this land. I sold it." Then she said calmly, "I was always thinking about you, Pep." I said, "You have always had a place in my heart. My heart was hurt just as I hurt you, Pep, and now I understand your feelings. Thanks to you, tell me that we are friends, Pep." I said, "We are actually friends. And we will continue," Estella added, "even when we are far apart." As I was leaving the garden, I had a definite feeling that we would never be far apart.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.